have to acknowledge that this piece of synthesis has been done very quickly, and we have a number of slides which captures, as best could be captured within the time available, what you discussed over the past hour. But just so that we perhaps can have a more productive 15 minutes discussion, I'm going to ask David to give a sense of what, introduce it basically.
So I'm going to do my best. This is, as Tom said, done in a rush. We have all your feedback sheets and we're going to do this properly, but we can't do it completely and thoroughly as we would like for today. So you will get this feedback done in a more thorough way in due course. So basically you'll find there's a certain amount of overlap. So what Tom suggested I do is just quickly talk through what's in the slides and then he can go back to the beginning and start the discussion. So in terms of the first question, should gender equality be enshrined in the Constitution? The themes that we were finding in the feedback sheets that seemed to be coming up quite prominently were these ones in favour, that to do so would recognise the rights of women. It would start to change attitudes in this country. It would sort of kickstart changes in attitudes. Yes, it would be a good idea for gender, but take it beyond gender to other groups. And finally, that it would encourage women if it was inserted into the Constitution. Then points against included a rather telling question: is gender equality not already protected in the Constitution under Article 40? That's worth dwelling on, perhaps. We don't need an explicit reference to gender in the Constitution. It wouldn't be a panacea. It'd be difficult to do. Far better if we did it through education rather than a constitutional change. And of course, in a couple of years, it should be, in an ideal world, of course, redundant. Question 2. I don't know if this thing is now not working for me. I'm such... okay. Okay, should Constitution be amended... point there, right, well done. To include a provision for special positive action measures. So points against... it is necessary to... So points in favour, I should beg your pardon. It's necessary to do this to improve representation. Yes, because if you do it, then it's certainly tamper-proof because it's enshrined in the Constitution. It would force the state to take action because it's enshrined in the Constitution, obviously. And Ireland would be a world leader, setting a gold standard in doing so. Then points against, it's inappropriate. Women are too diverse as a group to be represented, and it would be discriminatory. So that's just the basic summary of some of the main points. And then the final slide, if you were to go down the road of enshrining something, should it be in a sort of a big general positive action statement or in terms of more narrowly of a gender quota? There seemed to be a strong view we were getting that it should be a general statement only. There was another argument that was said you should just utilise the electoral legislation as is, so there's no need, in other words. So these are points for and points against on the same slide. We are really finishing quite quickly here. That perhaps the third point, you could go for it, but it should maybe have a sunset clause. So it might be a temporary measure. So you build in a sunset clause to it. Perhaps you try it at a local level first rather than nationally. And of course, the final point, if we went down that road, it would be not the easiest of referendums to get through. So forgive us that it's done at speed, but that's an attempt to try and put it out, the main points.
Thanks, David. Actually, there is a very significant question there on the second slide, which I think we better get some clarity on. Is gender equality not already protected in the Constitution? Siobhan, be able to make an expressive view on that, please?
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, maybe the podium, yeah.
So the answer is yes. So Article 40 protects equality before the law, and that has been interpreted quite clearly and consistently and over many years by the courts as including equality between women and men. So it's covered within Article 40, Section 1, and that has been confirmed in quite a lot of case law that that is the case. Many constitutions and international human rights documents would also have specific reference to equality between women and men, as well as a general clause on equality before the law or equal protection of the law. So it's still a possibility to include that if there was a wish in favour of that. And just an additional point is just to note that our equality legislation, the employment equality and the equal status legislation, protects against discrimination on 9 grounds. So in addition to gender, there's also protection against discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation, age, race, disability, religion, membership of the travelling community, for example. So if those are covered within the general equality provision that is already in the Constitution and has been interpreted by the courts to include gender equality between women and men, non-discrimination on grounds of sex. And that doesn't preclude you from suggesting that either a specific reference on gender should be included or equality between women and men, or additional grounds should be specifically enumerated. But we do have a general clause that is there at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's very important clarification, because clearly we shouldn't be recommending things that are already covered in the Constitution. That wouldn't make or enhance our credibility. I'll take any. You've all seen those 4 slides. I'll take comments now. David, and then Susan.
My name is David Cullinan. I agree with Siobhan that Article 40 does confer some level of protection, and there are rights, obviously, that are part of that article, and there are European charters as well. But there would be many who would believe that it's not comprehensive enough, and especially if we're looking at taking positive action measures, then it's not acceptable simply to refer back to that article in the Constitution, because the reality is that we're talking here about improving and enhancing the ability of women to be able to be involved in decision making. I mean, the figures that we got from all of the participants are very clear and very stark, that we do need to take positive action. So I would accept the point that there are obviously rights which are in the Constitution which are implicit, but to have an explicit gender equality provision, I think would be appropriate, and I think it would certainly add value in terms of what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. Susan.
Susan O'Keefe. Just one thing, and Chair, we just wanted to clarify the last sentence there on that slide surely doesn't mean that gender equality will be redundant in a few years. I think it meant gender quotas might be redundant in a few years, just as a clarification if it goes into the system that.
I would imagine that is correct interpretation,
We were of the view quite firmly that a gender quota, putting that into the Constitution, wouldn't be suitable. We didn't agree with that. We did feel that the idea that was raised as a clarification just at the end of the last session of human dignity, that we felt very much that at the very start of the Constitution, an article relating to human dignity and that idea of equality, diversification, to include gender, racism and sex and sexuality, that we would like to see that as a positive expression of 21st century Ireland, and that this opportunity, perhaps like the National Women's Council suggested, that we would suggest that as, at this time, to take that opportunity to put gender there, but to put the other things with it, and very explicitly state it in the Constitution rather than through employment or equality legislation, as the clarification that was just offered there. While that's obviously very valuable, we'd like to see it actually written into the Constitution.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Just a point of clarification. I noticed the word discriminatory there in one of the earlier slides, against, and I just think we need to be careful how we use that word, because if you look at it in the North, to deal with the issue of lack of nationalists or stroke Catholic in the policing service, it is legal to bring in temporary measures to deal, or temporary affirmative action to deal with underrepresentativeness, and it's the same for gender equality. I'm sure if you look, and I'm not the expert on all the international covenants, but I know for the Irish language and for lesser used languages, you can do temporary measures, that doesn't mean you're discriminating against other languages. So I just think we need to be careful about our discriminatory terminology there. Maybe we put a question mark or something, because I don't believe it is discriminatory. I think it is important that we proactively act to deal with the dreadful situation that we have in terms of gender inequality in our society, north and south.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Stephen Agnew. There's maybe a differentiation to be made. While the current constitution has almost a passive, we're all equal under the law, there's maybe a need for something more positive in terms of promotion of equality. And I think that distinction may be important in terms of how we would word any possible amendments, you know, the positive promotion of equality as opposed to a simple passive, we all must be equal, you know, because that seems to be the gap. It's not legislatively women are less valued. There hasn't been enough positive action, and I think that's maybe a distinction. I was going to make another point, but Lydia raised it, and I think it's right that she expressed it.
Just Lydia Peppard is my name. Just on the point of gender equality and going through the Constitution, there's a lot of he and his. There's no she. It's the President he, or the Taoiseach, if he wants to resign, he has to hand. So there's a whole lot of gender inequality in the Constitution already.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Other comments? Sorry, Aileen.
Thank you. Just on a point of clarification, we were one of the tables that put forward the idea that Article 40 already covered equality, but our view was that it could be expanded, particularly in line with the Convention on Human Rights, to include other categorisations of discrimination. But we had a view that in relation to Article 40, the second part of Article 40, which kind of, says that the state shall not in its enactments have due regard to the difference of capacity, physical and moral, and of social function. We thought that should be removed. I mean, particularly references to moral. It was in that context, and in terms of broadening Article 40, that we said that the second section wasn't relevant, because if we were broadening out the categorisation to be more than just on the grounds of gender, then taking special measures in relation to gender just wasn't really relevant. So our view was that it was the third question, which was how to take positive action to extend participation in the democratic process and in civil society generally, that was actually more relevant to the question.
Okay, thank you. I don't know whether in constitutional terms that word moral has perhaps a different meaning than the normal use of it. I just don't know, but maybe some of our experts might comment on that. Mary Lou.
Thank you, Tom. Mary Lou MacDonald. We also discussed that second clause or paragraph and felt that it should be if not removed, then certainly amended. Just to say, there was a concern at our table, and I've heard it echoed in other contributors now, around sort of privileging gender equality above and beyond the other 8 grounds or more where citizens experience disadvantage or a lack of inclusion or representativeness. I think myself that whilst there are other grounds, be it disability or membership of the travelling community and so on and so forth, gender isn't a minority issue. Women are in fact just marginally in the majority, and of course gender cuts across all of the other grounds, because there are women with disabilities, women within the travelling community and so on. So the idea that we had discussed is certainly a positive statement of gender equality within the Constitution itself, but then to look at this idea of a Bill of Rights, because there's unquestionably very many grounds and instances in which citizens don't, as of yet, have their rights writ large. So just to put that into the mix for you, Cathaoirleach.
Okay. This was a stratagem used by the US Constitution and its original founding, actually. Any other comments? Sorry, beg your pardon. Deirdre.
Hi, Deirdre Donaghy. I'll just try and give a view of the various people on the table, because we had quite a lot of different views. We did say that we like the fact that there was the all citizens shall be held equal before law. Some of us felt that that covered it, and some did want a specific reference put into gender because they felt that it's been there for this length of time, but yet it doesn't seem to have actually done what it says on the tin as such. But one thing we did say was that possibly the Constitution might not be the vehicle to do this, and that we should stick possibly with the presumption that we're equal before the law, but possibly national legislation that can adapt more quickly is more the place to do gender quotas or anything of that level, because it's something that can react more quickly. And is there a point in building something into the Constitution that we're saying at the start should have a sunset clause, and we're still talking now about something that was put in 1932, so you know the Constitution doesn't move particularly quickly. Sorry, that was it.
Okay. I mean, there's a very basic point in there in your comment as to, you know, what's appropriate for a constitution and what's appropriate for the law. And you know, that really is fairly basic to what our role is about here as a convention, I think. Yeah.
John Lardner. I suppose our table echoed Deirdre's table. How we see it is society is moving on. It is changing, perhaps not at the speed we'd like it to. Women are moving into positions of higher power in private and public life. Article 40 already enshrines equality for gender, and in the electoral system, Article 16 states that every citizen without distinction of sex shall be eligible for the Dáil. So it's already enshrined there as well in the Dáil system. I guess we didn't see any need for it to change. Maybe some wording to expand, but no great change required.
Okay, thanks, John. Catherine.
Catherine Murphy. I think we didn't feel that the Constitution was the correct vehicle, and this was being asked in the context of encouraging women to get involved in politics, in electoral politics. And it was quite interesting that how we had a discussion about how dominant women were in politics with a small p, with lots of organisations. And possibly, if I was to paraphrase what we said, and I hope I'll be correct in this, it's a question of adapting the institutions to women rather than women to the institutions, and that's where we need to start doing some work, because women don't see the relevance of, or they don't see that their investment in time is rewarded with the way some of the institutions are constructed.
Okay. That might be maybe an appropriate comment to conclude our session. Firstly, we are up on time. And secondly, I think we have quite a lot of consideration to do over the next couple of hours to try to frame a question, or come back to you in the morning to frame a question which is, if you like, both represents the discussion you've had and actually makes sense in terms of a question to be answered. So if I could maybe draw matters to a close, I would like to thank in particular the facilitators and note takers today for all your hard work. It's not over yet, but and I very much want to thank every single member here today, because it's been a long day, it's been an intensive day. I think there's been a great deal of information, I would say, put before you and absorbed. And, you know, it's perhaps certainly going to have overnight, no doubt you'll be further considering some of the matters we've been discussing. And you can do that most sociably and pleasantly at our dinner, which is at 7:30. So I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much.